Long Island Paranormal Investigators proudly presents Ghost News Network. Your hosts are Michael Cardenuto, Robert Levine, and Demetrius Haratos. And now, this week's edition of Ghost News Network.
Hello, this is Dimitri Haratos. Today is October 5th, 2014, and this is Ghost News Network. I know what a lot of you guys are thinking. What is Ghost News Network? Ghost News Network is a podcast that is going to be run by a group of paranormal investigators. We're called Long Island Paranormal Investigators. And just to start out, I'm Dimitri Haratos, one of your hosts, along with
Michael Cardenuto, Rob Levine,
Nancy Scary.
And so every week you'll hear from the four of us, and I figured we'd start with a quick intro, who we are, what we're about, and what this show is going to be about. So Michael, let you start with telling us who LIPI is.
Sure. Long Island Paranormal Investigators was founded March 8th of 2003. Me and Rob, basically, friends growing up, and we used to play hockey together, a bunch of friends and stuff, and we were just talking about different haunted locations on Long Island, and one in particular, Kings Park Psychiatric Center. And I turned around, it's two of them, and I dared two of our friends to go into the building. So they accepted the dare, and we went out there that night, and they had flashlights and a video camera and walkie-talkies, and they went into building 93 of Kings Park Psychiatric Center. And while they were in there, for about an hour and a half, and towards the end of the exploration, I guess you can call it, they heard a loud bang sound from the same room that they were in, and nothing moved or anything like that. Kind of freaked them out, and they left. So me and Rob kind of got together, and we looked up a bunch of the different haunted locations on Long Island, different urban legends and stuff, and found out that there's equipment, scientific equipment that they sell that goes along with a lot of the paranormal theories. So we purchased some of the stuff, and kind of went from there. And we started out small with some minor equipment, EMF meters, thermometers, video cameras, and kind of took off from there. And it's been an awesome ride ever since. I mean, we started the group because I've always heard a lot of these stories growing up as a kid, and I wanted to kind of see if there was any truth to these myths and urban legends on Long Island. And this kind of gave us that shot to try to figure that out. So and then while doing this, and I'll let Rob take over from here, so go for it.
I was in college, and I was working on my different classes. One of my classes was a sociology of the paranormal class, where we learned about all different things involving the field. We learned about different stuff involving psychics, healing, stuff involving spirits, whatever the professor wanted to go over, but based upon theories and where did stuff come from, and where did the idea of people believe in this, where did ultimately, what was the root of it. But we had to work on a final project for the class, and it had to be a minimum of 15 pages for it. And everybody had to do something different, so you had to go over with the professor beforehand what it is that you wanted to do and get his permission to go and to do it. And so when I was talking to Dr. Bankston, I had asked him, would it be okay if I took different urban legends of the island, and I went and did studies on it, and if I could find any truth to it or find anything that was false about it, investigate it and see what I could come up with. And he thought it was a good idea because no one else had really done anything like that before. So he gave me his blessing for that, and so we worked on it. And every time we would go do an investigation, I would add that into my report of what we were doing, what the stories were behind it, what we found, what we didn't find, and I used that to write my paper, and I got an A+ on it. And then after the class was over, I had Dr. Bankston for a lot of other classes. He was one of the bigger professors in my college. He told me that I did a good job on it, and if I had an interest in it, I should continue to pursue it. And so periodically, since he was my student advisor, when I go and see him and stuff in the office, we would talk about what I was doing. He would give his opinions on stuff for what type of things he thought we should do and how we should go about it. And he would listen, and he was always encouraging about it. So we kept going with it, and been going with it ever since then.
Yeah, it's been an interesting ride. It's almost like everything kind of fell into place. Like the dare into the same interest that me and Rob kind of had for the field, and just the different urban legends. Then the fact that he was able to go and do a college report, and having his professor really kind of guide him, and not just him, but it was kind of the group. I never met the professor, but that kind of got brought into the team as well. And we started out small, like I said, and I think around 2006 is where a lot of changes started to happen. That's where we got our DVR system. We really knew about a lot of the equipment, really studied on what it did and how it worked, and that's when we started getting our house investigations. And that kind of took off from there. We met a lot of the paranormal celebs that are out in the field, and sat through many, many lectures, learning from them, learning their ways. But we did, a lot of research ourselves. Back then, there really wasn't anything to go by. There was, you had, I think the TV show out at that time was like A Haunting, and then Ghost Hunters was just kind of coming out around that time. So, it was a lot of self-research that we all did, and kind of got us to where we are today. Like I said, we've been around since March 8th of 2003, going strong. I was always fascinated since I was a kid, and now that I'm able to do, something that I absolutely love to do, it's awesome. Let me tell you, it's just an awesome ride. So.
Very good. I'm Dimitri. I came from I've been with Long Island Paranormal Investigators, start there, for over 7 years now. I'm one of the lead guys. I'm one of the guys that had to work myself from the ground up.
Yeah.
But I started in Massachusetts. I worked for a group called New England Paranormal, and I had done that for a few years. And then I moved back to New York, which is where we are located. And first thing I did was say, I want to get back to paranormal, and I started looking up groups, and I found this group, and I've been here ever since. And I'll tell you, this group is run far different from anything else that I've seen. I've seen how other groups run. The group that I was a member of was run by Steve Gonzalez, who runs TAPS. He's one of the main guys on the show there. He's the tech manager, and actually he's co-host now, right?
Yeah, I think he's a co, yeah.
And so I'd worked with all those guys in the past. But here we meet every week. It's very dedicated. We put in as much time as we can, and we're constantly learning and teaching and stuff like that in the field. And there's no place I'd rather be than with Long Island Paranormal Investigators. So I've always considered it an honor to be in this group. So
We love you too.
yeah, that's as nice as I'm getting today.
There you go.
That playtime's over, kids.
Nancy, tell us about you.
About me? Well, while you're asking. Now, my name's Nancy Scurry. I've been here about coming up on 2 years. That time flies, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I know, and you haven't kicked me out yet. I appreciate it. Thank you very much about that.
And we just learned how you love chicken feet.
Yes.
Yes.
Without with the pedicure. It's just my birthday's coming up, kids. Just make note. Now, I grew up in a house that was that experienced a lot of paranormal activity. I currently live in the town of Kings Park, so I currently live in a house that experiences a lot of paranormal activity. I said it just wanting to find answers for myself and help other people find answers. I work with Rob in our case management department. We literally receive, and when I mean literally, I mean actually, we've received requests for assistance from Afghanistan, Pakistan, China, Australia, Canada, England. Yeah, we just had one from England. So people are looking for answers, and I get a lot of satisfaction being able to because especially something like us, like paranormal activity. You know, if you have a problem with an electrical system, no one's going to question you calling an electrician. If you have a problem with pests, you call an exterminator. Nobody's going to. But what are you going to say when the cabinets keep opening and closing and you're afraid to sleep in your own bed at night? I mean, who? You know, people
Who are
are
you going to call?
Us. Everyone on planet Earth calls us. No, but so just being able to, know that they can come to us and not get laughed at, but no, that we'll listen to what they have to say. We'll take their requests seriously. We'll find out what's going on, and even if it is just the electrical system, now that at least they know, then they can go and get it resolved, and that's a great feeling to be able to do that.
Right.
So.
I'm gonna jump in and say this because Nancy was talking about how she grew up in a house that was haunted. What was all of your first personal experiences with the paranormal?
Wow, that's a good
So let's
question.
start there.
First personal experience with the paranormal was probably back in, I think it was probably 1988. I was 8 years old, and my grandfather recently passed, and I had this little handheld game. It was way before like Game Boy and those types of
Tiger
games.
Electronics?
Yeah, something
I
like
know what
that.
you're talking
Little
about.
handheld
No,
video games.
no
Yeah.
color screen.
Oh yeah, no,
or
it
anything.
was just the black outline
Yeah,
of the
exactly,
characters.
exactly.
I have some upstairs
So,
still for my boys.
I had one of those games, and there was no batteries in it, and I was sitting on my mom's bed, and we were just talking, and bam, the thing just turned on by itself. And my whole family had all these different stories that kind of happened. Like my brother felt like he had someone like while he was sleeping, like touch his leg, and his leg got all numb and stuff. My little cousin, he was a baby at the time, and he had these little these little like bunny rabbit things like sewed into this thing on the wall, like this frame, and when they woke up the next day, they were all lying on the floor. My aunt and uncle had like a knocker on their door, and they used to hear like a knocking at night. They'd walk outside, nobody was there. So growing up, hearing all these stories when I was a kid and having the experience myself, I was always fascinated. And then it was just, growing up, I had, comprehension problems with reading and stuff, but the one thing I could always read and understand was anything about ghosts or UFOs or like Loch Ness and the Monster, Bigfoot, stuff like that just always fascinated me. So I always had that interest. So, but yeah, first paranormal experience ever was definitely that game turning on. Never forgot it.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Go ahead, Rob.
I'm thinking. I would say never really had anything happen until we started doing this. Growing up as a kid, there was nothing I could say that there wasn't another possibility of it for it. I'm always somewhat skeptical, but I never had anything paranormal actually happen growing up. Just watched a bunch of TV shows and read a bunch of books and had an interest in it, and decided I would explore and see what I could find. The first thing I had that was really that weird was probably the first night at Kings Park for it, and then after doing that for a while, we had other experiences at Mount Misery and things like that. But otherwise, outside of it, even home now, still I can't say I've ever had anything that happens.
The Reed's Ice Cream Factory is pretty
Yeah.
wild. I mean, that was something that kind of took us all. I mean, that was during the beginning. Go over that story. That
That was probably 2004.
2000, probably the end
Based
of
on the
2003, 2004. Yeah,
Based on the people, 2004, 2005 maybe, because you had John Lita and other people there.
that's right.
Let's see. Reed's Ice Cream Factory was a warehouse based for the Brooklyn-based Reed Ice Cream Corporation, who went out of business in the 1920s. But the factory building still stood there after the place closed down. Then in the early 2003 is when they tore it down. So they tore it down in 2003, but prior to that, it was kind of like a local hangout for the kids and stuff, and it was like the make-out place for it, and children would play on the property. But we were there doing an investigation after the place was torn down, but there was still rubble and parts of the building and stuff around that hadn't been cleaned out from it. And we walked in, and it wasn't really that cold. It was like now, it's fall weather to it, not too hot, not too cold. From a video camera was going in, what equipment we had back in 2004 to it. But one of our investigators, I believe it was Tim Signorelli, was asking audio, was asking EVP questions to it, and I don't remember, someone had the video camera going to it, but it got to the point Tim asked the question of, if anyone's here and we're bothering you and you want us to leave, give us some sort of a sign and we'll leave you in peace. So he said, and at first nothing happened, and so he just continued on. He started asking the next question, but then the equipment started going off and on, and we had one of our earliest EMF meters. We had the
Cell sensor.
it was the multi-detector too. That started blinking. The video camera started rewinding weirdly for some reason. No one hit the button; it just turned off.
Yeah.
Started rewinding. And it started getting cooler as Tim was talking, and then we checked the thermometer temperature. It was like 15 degrees colder than when we started. For it, which is odd, and we decided that obviously if there's something here, it's giving us every opportunity sign possible that it just wants to be left alone. So we said we would keep our words, and we backed away and we left. We got back to the car. The video camera was acting normal. Everything else was fine.
Yeah.
It was just a strange evening to be there, standing in the middle of this rubble and having that stuff happen. That was probably one of the weirder experiences.
Yeah, it was. I'll never forget that. I remember that night. You know, we were new to the field. You know, a couple of years in, and it freaked
So
us out.
spooking was easy. It's not as hard as it is now.
You know, it caught us off guard. You know, like you didn't expect when you asked that question for something to actually happen.
Right.
And not just one thing happened, but multiple things happened. And yeah, I mean, they built houses on that location now, so God bless.
Yeah. I know. I'll just jump in with mine now.
Yeah.
When I was a kid, I was probably about 8 years old as well, and so it was 1990, and me and my brother, we shared a room and we were in bunk beds, and as we were sleeping one night, we both woke up. He woke me up and he was like, "Dimitri, I see something. Come here." And I get up and I look, and as we're looking from our beds, like kind of like poking our head around the corner, was where our doorway was, and you just saw this man in an old bomber outfit, like old pilot looking outfit, look at me and Chris, and then just keep going, and just disappeared right into the wall. Just looked and kept going, and that was it. That was all that happened. And we were totally freaked out, and we were telling our mom about it and our dad, and they're nothing but encouraging parents always growing up, so no matter what it was, they'd encourage us. And my mom actually went and researched the house and took me and my brother, and we helped research the house too. We found out that we lived in Lake Ronkonkoma, and way back in the 20s through probably about the 60s, the Lake Ronkonkoma area was the Hamptons. What the Hamptons is now, out east, is what Lake Ronkonkoma used to be. This is where all the celebrities would hang out and spend summers and stuff like that. And so when we were researching it, we found out that our house was actually owned by a Hollywood actress that owned the property, and she had her house there, and it was the same house that we had lived in, and that her boyfriend or husband, I can't remember exactly now, was a pilot that crashed and died around that time, and I guess he was just visiting the house or whatever. But that was our first experience with the paranormal, and I've always been into it. I love Ghostbusters and stuff like that, and it's always piqued my interest, so I've always researched that stuff. And then when I was older, I'm just going to tell my second paranormal story because it's personal to me, was when my grandfather passed away. Everybody in my family was having experiences. My uncle and my aunt, who weren't talking to each other at the time, their phones started ringing, and one was in Europe and the other one was in America, and neither one of them had international calling.
Wow.
Both phones rang at the same time. They both answered it, and they were talking to each other like my grandfather was trying to get them to reconcile.
Right.
And my dad, who had this TV that he had just bought right before my grandfather had passed away, was saying how much he loved this TV and all this other stuff. And so the TV, one day my dad was watching it, just did a weird electrical pop. And it was this weird swooshing multicolored thing that you just couldn't explain, and it looked like my dad said it looked like there was a handprint in there or something as it faded away. And then so everybody in my family was having experiences, and I was like, why don't I have an experience? Everybody's seen my grandfather but me. And I was doing a religious show. It's a journey crossing crucifixion around Easter time that I used to do every year. And it was the end of the show, and I was carrying the actor who played Jesus out of the church, and I walk into the hallway, and just at that moment I felt this hand grip me on the back of the neck and rub my neck the way my papu used to. I literally never in my life have I fallen to the ground and cried like a baby like I did that day. and I couldn't even do the rest of the show. They had to do the rest of the show without me. I was just inconsolable. But yeah, that's my second paranormal. Don't mind the sink troll.
It's got the blob coming out.
It's just a paranormal experience in progress, ladies
There's a
and
pink
gentlemen.
ooze coming out of the tub.
Don't cross the sun. Don't cross the streams.
But yeah, so that's those are some big ones for me on a personal level. And then doing this through the years, we've had our experiences that have been pretty crazy, and we'll get into one later on when we do our EVP of the week.
Yeah.
So, but Nancy, tell us yours.
Well, as I said, growing up, we lived in a house that experienced a lot of paranormal activity. We lived with my grandparents. My grandfather passed away when I was 2, so I really don't have much memory of him. But it said we'd see, we'd see apparitions. I'd hear whistling, like off-key whistling. Sometimes I'd smell. My brother grew up. He was an asthmatic, so no one could smoke in the house. Everyone had to step outside, and sometimes I'd just catch whiffs of cigarette smoke, and I was like, "What's going on?" I talked to my mom years later. I was like, "What's evidently my grandfather was really crappy at whistling, and he was a chain smoker up and just before he died. He died of a heart attack, and he had quit smoking just before he had died, trying to work with his cardiologist. So, but it said it was like, oh, it must be your grandfather. I'm like, oh, cool, all right, thanks. Oh, I miss you. Yeah, I said
Yeah.
I miss him too. So it wasn't anything. Like I said, I could see where people could be very frightened.
Sure.
Even if it's not anything that's an entity, that if it's an intelligent haunting that it has any kind of bad intent, but if it's not something you're used to and you're not expecting it, those sort of things could be very frightening. But because of my upbringing, it was kind of normal.
Right.
So it never really, obviously it was somebody watching out for me. So that's always how I kind of took it. But yeah, that was said. We'd see apparitions, and it said other members of the family too. They'd see misty hazes in the house during the day and things. We'd hear stuff at night. So there's no one to keep an eye out for us.
Yeah.
So thank you. At Kings Park, where I currently live, I would see things like shadow, just like these. It's not like a person, like a shadow figure, but I'll see these ball of shadow, a shadow ball, I guess, and nothing that would cast it, but I'll see it go down the road.
Right.
Because I live right around the corner from the actual hospital.
Right.
And just because they have a fence, folks are gonna go
Right.
where they're gonna go.
Yeah.
But I'll see shadow figures. I'll hear stuff. But folks are just a lot of people. Everybody's got to be somewhere doing something.
Yeah, that's the truth.
They come see me. So, but
All right. So here at Ghost News Network, we have a format. And,
We do?
We do. We try to stick to it. Sometimes
No.
we do. Sometimes we don't. I mean, it is what it is. But what we like to do is we try to take an educational standpoint from this, and we like to give people knowledge as well as hearing us banter and stuff like that.
Is that why we do a beer review?
We do beer reviews sometimes. I don't know if we're doing one today.
we've
we've kind
been
of got a mix.
practicing. We're practicing
here,
for
but,
beer review. Thank you.
But yeah, we do. Our outline is normally we do an urban myth and legend, and that's this week it's going to be the White Horse Tavern. We do a definition or a theory of the week. Today we're going to talk about a brief history of EVPs. For those of you that are new to listening about the paranormal and stuff like that, want to know more about what EVPs are, what the history is about EVPs, we're going to go through that whole thing there. We're going to do a equipment review. We go over equipment, so if you're a budding paranormal investigator or you're a long-term paranormal investigator and you're just trying to figure out what something new might be to try and stuff like that, we'll go over equipment over the course of the shows, and you guys will get an idea what's out there and available to you. And then we do a segment called This Week in Paranormal History, where we take what happened around this time period that was actually a historic event, but also what the paranormal claims to that event are. Then Nancy goes over her social stuff. She'll pick an article that's hot, or she'll talk about stuff that's going on Facebook or Google Plus or Twitter and stuff like that, and just talk about those articles and what people are saying about them and things like that. And then we answer some fan questions that we receive. We post them on our Facebook page. We'll say people that have questions, post now, and we'll go over it during the podcast, and we usually grab a couple of those to go over. We usually do a movie review, barring that there is enough time, if we haven't rambled for too long. And we also have a thing called the LIPI Evidence Vault, and that's where we take EVPs that we've caught over the years and play them for you guys to hear and talk about what had happened at that moment and why we think it's an EVP and stuff like that, and just go into detail about it. So now I'm going to start with our urban myth and legend. I'm going to pass it over to Mike, who is our resident paranormal historian.
I don't know about that, but White Horse Tavern, brief history. White Horse Tavern is located at 567 Hudson Street at West 11th Street in Manhattan. The tavern was built in 1880. Since 1950, the White Horse Tavern has been known for New York's poets to go and hang out there. One of the known poets that hung out at the tavern was Dylan Thomas. Thomas was known to go to the tavern quite often. In 1953, he decided to try and beat his record of 18 shots of whiskey. When he finished with his shots of whiskey, he stumbled outside and collapsed on the sidewalk. Soon after that, he was taken to the Chelsea Hotel, where he slipped into a coma. The next morning, he was taken to St. Vincent's Hospital, where he passed away. That sucks.
Yeah,
So
just a little bit.
You're going to do shots of whiskey?
Stop at 17.
Stop at 17. Haunted history. It is said that there have been many encounters with the ghost of Dylan Thomas there. People claim that they have seen him sitting at his favorite corner table and then just disappear. There have also been reports of seeing Dylan Thomas outside the White Horse Tavern walking around as well. So, yeah, this place is, I believe it's still open. It is in Manhattan.
Mm-hmm.
You can go check it out. I've been there quite a few times, actually. It's a pretty cool location. So, yeah, if you're ever in the Manhattan area, go check it out.
Very cool.
I've
Go
been
ahead.
to the White Horse.
You've been there.
I've been to the
Tell us your tale.
Yeah, well, the only spirits I ran into that night came from the tap. I'm not gonna lie. However, what I like about locations like this is that they're places that are open, they're accessible, you can just go, even if you don't. And they really try to not change it around too much. It still pretty much looks like it did originally. And it's kind of just nice to kind of just sit in and just take in the atmosphere and just kind of like walk around where folks like Dylan Thomas went. And they said it's really just cool that these spaces are still pretty much preserved. And like I said, even if you don't run into the ghost of Dylan Thomas, I said it's not like it's a boarded up place that you gotta do the duck and it's like a covert operation well, the building used to be here. It's just like I said, it's just a really cool place. It's down in the Village.
It's worth going to for a shot of whiskey.
Or not 18.
Not 18.
Less than 18. Stop at a dozen. Just pace yourself. But it's a really cool place. It's like a really old style, old New York bar.
Right.
And it's just worth it to go. And yes, it's just worth it to go. So if you're in there, you were gonna go anyway.
How updated is it? Is it updated at all, or do they keep
They
it?
they kept the decor. But obviously like things like building codes and stuff. But they still, it's not
Has
like
that
it's
ambiance to it?
Yeah. They still have the old wood. Last time I was there, they still had the old wood bar. It's kind of historical landmarks, and they're not gonna
Can't
change it around.
They can only
And you really wouldn't want to.
Right.
That's
right.
kind of
No,
part of the
absolutely.
cachet. It's not like it's going to be some hipster bar place, but no, but it's just like I said, it's a really cool slice of old New York, and unlike places like the Algonquin and stuff, where it's like, oh no, don't come in here, no ghosties here, no, but you can go and take haunted walking tours, and they'll take you there, and this is where Dylan Thomas sat and all this other stuff. But it's just a really cool place to go and just enjoy it.
Very cool.
Yes.
All right. So now we're going to talk about our brief history of EVPs. And brief history of EVPs it's just a background information to help explain how paranormal researchers on EVPs got to where that it is today. So the great, I'm sorry, I'm already stumbling all over myself. The great inventor Thomas Edison is generally credited for being the first person to conceive that a device could be created to hear and speak with spirits. In 1920's newspaper interview, he said someday it may be possible to have such a device. This is considered a remarkable comment since Edison himself never really showed any interest in the paranormal or supernatural, nor expressed any deep spiritual belief system. At the same time, other great inventors such as Guglielmo Marconi, who created the wireless radio, and Nikola Tesla, who was responsible for his work with electricity, perhaps in cooperation with each other, also began to work on a device that they believe could communicate with the dead. In the late 1920s through the 1930s, several psychic researchers claimed to have heard voices on recorded radio broadcasts that were not a part of the broadcast and could not be accounted for by anything in the surrounding area. Now, during World War II, Swedish and Norwegian radio operators reported hearing unfamiliar voices. They assumed it was the Germans, but after World War II, when captured German records, there were no such evidence that Nazi activity in those frequencies at that time could be found. The actual credit for having the first recording of an EVP goes to Fredrik Jurgensen. In 1959, Fredrik Jurgensen, who was a Swedish film producer, was supposedly recording bird songs in the Swedish Alps. He would later admit that he was trying to record the voices of the dead. He claims not to have heard anything unusual during the recordings, but heard many voices upon playback. He claims to have heard his own mother's voice calling his name. Some accounts say he heard his mother's voice telling him he was being watched. Jurgensen recorded hundreds of voices over his lifetime and played them at many of his symposiums and conferences. His recordings still remain unexplained to this day. Through the 1960s and the 1970s, researchers, especially in England, claimed to have recorded thousands of voices. In 1982, engineer George Meek and psychic William O'Neill built a device called a Spiricom. They claim it allows two-way, real-time communication with spirits. The claim is still under heavy dispute to this day. But today, with the invention of digital recorders and reliable professional-grade sound editing software, paranormal investigators around the world continue to record and analyze unexplainable voices. So, for those that don't know what an EVP is, it's an electronic voice phenomenon, and they're probably, I would go out on a limb to say, one of the more common pieces of evidence that's found in the field today.
I would say, this past year alone, out of every 5 investigations we've been doing, I'd say about 3 out of 5 have been getting legitimate EVPs. This year has, for some reason, been more active than the past. So
I wonder if it has anything to do with all this extra solar energy we've had throughout the year and stuff like that.
That's one of the theories out there. So it is a possibility. We log that week in and week out. So we'll have to kind of start analyzing the data and seeing where we're at next year once we start going back out again and see where that's at. So, but just so people know that when we do our investigations, we take a reading called Ghost Weather Station, and that'll tell you 10 things. It'll give you your solar activity, your geomagnetic field. It'll give you your moon phases. It'll give you your weather conditions, whether it's the humidity, the dew point, the UV spectrum, the weather itself, whether it's cloudy, sunny, things like that, the temperature. I know wind, and I don't know if I'm missing any. I'm just kind of rattling them off the top of my head, not thinking too much about it. But it'll give you that information so that you know what your conditions are before you go out and investigate. Right. So if you're new to the field, or even if you've been doing it a while and you want to know, why am I getting these readings like this, or why do your temperature ranges so different, Ghost Weather Station is the way to go. You can go to Google and just Google search it, Ghost Weather Station. I forget which team is the one that set that up. It's West Virginia Ghost Hunters or something like that. Yeah. They have it on their website, and they also have it as an application that you can put on your Facebook page as well. Yeah, we also have it on our website.
We have it on our website.
Our website, www.liparanormalinvestigators.com. Right on the front page, if you scroll down to the left, I think we have listed solar, geo, and moon phases listed right on our front page. So.
And that's stuff that people take for granted. They don't realize that information is out there, and those are crucial because the sun, like this weekend, for example, people may have been having problems with their internet. I know I have, and stuff like that. There's been crazy solar flares going on, and they say it affects the electromagnetic field around you.
Right.
So if it's affecting the electromagnetic field and it's getting in the way of your radio frequencies and stuff like that, maybe there's an abundance of energy out there for spirits to manifest.
Yeah.
I mean, we don't know for sure, but it's definitely something to think about. So check it out. Go to our website, www.liparanormalinvestigators.com. Check out our ghost weather station and stuff like that. It's worth a look for sure. Now to move on, we have our equipment review.
Yep.
And I'll just throw that towards you, Mike, and you're going to do EMF electrosensor.
Yeah, the EMF electrosensor. It's a basic EMF meter, detects electromagnetic fields. This meter, it probably runs, I'd say in the ballpark figure, probably around $20, give or take. You can get them on eBay, lessemf.com, any one of those. Basically, when you use this meter, it's got a bunch of different colored lights that light up on the side, very similar to the K2. Just instead of the lights being on the top, it's on the side. The range is, a little bit more than the K2 meter is. It does not detect radio signals like the K2. It's just straight electromagnetic fields. We have gotten some interesting things in the past. With the downfalls with using this meter is that you have to hold the button down. We found out that what we've been doing lately is just popping the rubber band around it to hold the button down, because when you first hit the button on the meter, lights are going to jump up and come back down. It's just a test on the meter, and unfortunately, if you're on an 8-hour investigation, you're sitting here using this thing, holding it down for a couple of hours, your thumb eventually is going to get a little tired, and you're going to eventually let up a little bit on it, causing those lights to jump up when it's not really paranormal activity. So you could use the Chris Fleming theory, twice for yes, once for no. And basically the theory with EMF is that there's two theories. When a ghost manifests, it's going to give off some type of EMF field that this meter is able to pick up. Or if you're in a room that has high EMF, the entity or ghost is able to draw in that high EMF energy to manifest. So those are kind of the two theories that go along with electromagnetic field theory. So yeah, that's about it.
Could you go a little bit more in depth for people that are new that don't know exactly what the Chris Fleming theory is? For two for yes, once for no.
Chris Fleming theory. We call it the Chris Fleming theory. The first time I've ever seen this theory used was from him in, I think, Ghost Hunter season 3, which was Chris Fleming. He had a K2 meter, and basically with the K2 meter, it lights up, a bunch of different lights in the top, and he'll ask the entity to blink those lights twice for yes or once for no. In theory, what happens is when you're asking a yes or no question, you'll see twice for yes, the lights will light up twice, or once for no. And you can use that kind of with this EMF electrosensor as well. We haven't gotten, evidence like the TV shows yet, but I have gotten some interesting stuff in the past. I will say that, but that's about it.
Very cool.
EMF electrosensor.
I like it. I like the little probe. You can kind of angle it around.
Yeah, it's not bad. It's a good starter.
It is, absolutely. If you're new to the field, it's definitely
cheap.
Something worth
It's
picking up.
inexpensive. It doesn't, it takes, I think, like one AAA battery to run it. It's not crazy, and
Can't really mess up with it.
yeah, I mean, if you break it,
Press a button.
I wonder if they
expensive
sell any
to
with a
replace.
switch now.
Who knows? They might. Technology's changed.
You could probably install your
Yeah.
switch if you know what you're doing.
I mean, you probably
Yeah,
could.
you could. Absolutely. You just
Take out the button.
Yeah,
you
push
just
button switch.
you just take out the switch and
Yep.
change it out. All right, so now we have This Week in Paranormal History, and Rob's going to give us the history, and I'll go over the paranormal information.
Okay, so here we go. October 5th, 1864, the Union Army won the Battle of Altoona. After losing the city of Atlanta, Confederate General John B. Hood attacks Union General William Tecumseh Sherman's supply line at the Altoona Pass in Georgia. Hood's men cannot take the Union stronghold, and they were forced to retreat back into Alabama. Hood took charge of the rebel army in July of 1864, replacing the defensive-minded Joseph Johnston. Confederate President Jefferson Davis had become frustrated with Johnston's constant retreating, so he appointed Hood, who was known for his aggressive style. Hood immediately attacked Sherman's larger army at 3 separate times, at Atlanta, Peachtree Creek, and Ezra Church. All of his attacks were unsuccessful, and destroyed Confederate Army's offensive capabilities, were in past stated. After evacuating Atlanta in September of 1864, Hood planned to draw Sherman back northward. Hood did not have the the troops' strength to move against Sherman, so he swung west of Atlanta and moved westward across the railroad and supplied the Yankee army from Chattanooga, Tennessee. At first it worked well. Retracing Sherman's advance to Atlanta, Hood's men began tearing up the Western and Atlantic Railroad. Starting on September 29th, the rebel army destroyed 8 miles of track and captured 600 prisoners. Hood sent General Alexander Stewart's corps to secure Altoona, the site of the large Federal supply depot. Sherman realized the threat to his lines and dispatched a brigade under General John Corse to secure the area. Corse's 2,000 men arrived at Altoona before Stewart's divisions, led by Samuel French, attacked on October 5th. French had over 3,000 troops, but the Yankee army overcame the difference with the new Henry repeating rifles. French attacked and pushed the Federal army back at first, but Altoona was easily defended. By midday, French realized that he would not be able to take the depot. He withdrew and rejoined Hood's army. During the course of the battle, French's men lost 897 people, while the Union army lost 706. Realizing that the army was in no shape to continue fighting, Hood took his force west and into Alabama. In November, he would invade into Tennessee.
Very good. He was a guy that did
He was-
stuff. He was a guy.
Yeah, that did
he was a
stuff.
guy that did stuff.
That was the first
lot of
major
shooting.
battle that featured the Henry repeating rifle, which was really, compared to using a musket where you fired one shot every 15 to 20 seconds or so if you
Right.
were a well-trained soldier, to being able to fire repeatedly 8 shots
Right.
and then just reload down to 2
Right.
and then continue. Actually, it was 16 shots. You keep firing. They claimed that the gun they could shoot all day.
Wow, and we're down to 7 now.
That's a whole nother
Wow.
story. That's not because of
That'll be your little secret.
Yeah, right?
But but no, the Henry rifle was sort of cutting edge technology. That was like, you might as well have gone in with laser guns in comparison.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you could keep shooting 16 shots while the
Right.
Confederate army would form their line, fire a shot, they would duck down, second line would stand up, fire their shot, duck down, third line would stand up, fire their shot.
While the other
The
two
process
were
of repeating and continuing the process. And a well-trained soldier could fire maybe once every 20 seconds versus the guy with just clicking the lever every second, firing over
which
and over
you
again.
could pretty much train anyone to do. So,
Yeah.
anyone with any sort of firearms experience would all of a sudden be a marksman with
Well,
this.
part of the reason that there was such a delay in going into repeating arms is that the generals were all very much old school, learned in the
Mhm.
1840s during the Mexican-American War and everything.
Uh-huh.
They were afraid to change their technology and have the troops not just simply take a ball, drop it down the tube, push it down the ramrod,
Mhm.
and fire it and change it. They figured it was easier for them to do that because then instead of aiming, you were standing in a line of 300 people. You fired, someone was bound to hit something.
Everything
and they continued
counts
on.
in large amounts.
Yes.
That's right.
But that's because they were using the battle tactics of the Revolutionary War and the War of 1812, not counting for the fact that the rifled muskets now had a much longer range.
Yeah.
Until somebody showed up with the Henry rifles and just started mowing them down.
We have paranormal activity that goes with this, guys.
Yes.
Yeah.
Please tell us
Just so
about
you
it.
know, we're not
There we go.
we're not trying to teach you guys anything, all right? There's a paranormal thing behind this.
I'm gonna go to the range.
All right, so paranormal claims. Altoona Pass has had many ghost stories surrounding the battlefield, and in fact, the whole town. One story is of the unknown Confederate soldier whose body was sent to the town, but he could not be identified. Orbs of light by the old grave of the unknown Confederate soldier have been reported. Temperature drops of about 10 degrees in the old train bed. Also, gunpowder can be smelled. Altoona also has a traditional ghost light story. A mysterious illuminated orb is seen bobbing along the tracks at night. Reportedly, the spirit of a soldier buried in the gap, which carries a lantern in search of a long-vanished comrades. Balls of light flit around the grave. A variation has the phantom soldier's ghost dog running alongside the passing engines before stopping at his master's grave. Lastly, there is a ghost seen on the top of the trains. Many believe he is trying to fix broken trains that are in the yard. You can see him from the distance, but as you approach, he'll disappear from sight. So those are some of the paranormal stories that go with the Battle of Altoona from October 5th, 1864, which is today. On the dot. And it's, so what is that? That is how many years? 1964 is 100. I can't add. Adding is my weakness in life. Sorry. But it's the anniversary. It's a round number, guys.
Let's see, it's 2014
2014
minus 1864.
minus 1864. Oh, good. Nancy's got her calculator out.
150 years today.
150 years today. I knew it was a big deal.
Nice. There you go.
That's an
I didn't-
anniversary, guys.
I think we should get some beer for that.
We have
or
We
cake.
already have that.
We're good here, and we have
Cake.
plenty of cake. I can find you some cake.
Beer
Mike.
cake.
Nice.
Let's see. Now that's our This Week in Paranormal History, and now I'm gonna pass the ball over to Nancy, who has been super quiet tonight, guys.
Yeah, right.
Well, folks have been
We're
yapping.
hogging the limelight over
Yapping.
there.
Okay, now, what we, my segment is, because I didn't pick this name, but this is the name we're going with, is Scury's Social Street.
That's right. I liked all the S's.
I'm sure you do. No, it wasn't my idea, but we're going to go with it. So basically what I do is I just take a
When
look.
you figure out a better name, you let me know.
I like
Sure.
I like the tongue twister name.
Right? Social Street.
You can't even say it!
Scary Social Street. Beer helps with S's, by the way. I don't know if you guys know that.
Anyway, so what I do is I just take a look at what sort of things are trending on the web, what sort of things people are talking about, books, movies, whatever is of interest, and we kind of bring it up. I'll go ahead and post links so you can go ahead and see what we're talking about, and we just kind of discuss things like, videos, weird events captured on surveillance video, things that people are talking about. So anyway, for today, what I did was I grabbed from the website mysteriousuniverse.org.
Okay.
We're talking about cryptozoology and specifically the spectral moose of Maine. Speaking of onomatopoeia and such, things that sound like what they are, and alliteration and all that good stuff. So anyway, here's the article. One of the categories of creatures that lies squarely somewhere out of the fringe twilight between cryptozoology and the paranormal is the phenomena of spectral animals. Britain has its mysterious phantom black dogs. The Midwest of the United States seemed to be plagued by bizarre disappearing and reappearing kangaroos. The list goes on. These are creatures that on the surface seem to be of somewhat cryptozoological nature, yet on further inspection prove to be not only strange, but way too strange. Within this menagerie of the weird, one that certainly stands out among all the strangeness is an apparition known as the specter moose of Maine. The specter moose was a mysterious creature spotted in several areas around Maine during the 1900s. The creature was described as being an enormous moose, 18 to 15 feet high, with a ghostly, dirty white coloration and brandishing an immense set of formidable antlers. The coat of the animal is sometimes described as glowing faintly. The spectral moose was said to have an extremely acute sense of smell and hearing, as well as the ability to appear or disappear at will, and to phase through solid objects. Hunters who come across the apparition often told not being able to get near enough for a shot, as well as the animal's rather disconcerting habit of subtly blinking in or out of existence right before their eyes. A hunter by the name of Gilman Brown and his companions, a taxidermist by the name of Granville Gray, described one encounter in which they fired at the moose only for it to vanish before the bullets could hit it. The specter moose was first cited in 1901 when a sportsman from Boston by the name of M.A. Cushing spotted the beast near Chairback Mountain on the Caledon region. A few months later, the giant moose was seen again near the Lobster Lakes by a town guide by the name of Clarence Duffy and a Bangor lumberman called John Ross. In the following years, the moose would appear in waves of sightings only to disappear for years at a time before rearing its head again. One such rash of sightings occurred in 1917, another in 1932, and then again in 1938. During the 1938 sightings, the monstrous moose was often seen stalking the forests of the Chesapeake region along the west branch of the Penobscot River. On a particularly vivid report came from a man only known as Hudson, who was on his way back to camp after a timber cruise around the lake. Houston came across an open bog that he described as being about 30 acres in size. Within this bog, the man spied a herd of 16 moose feeding. About 80 yards from the main herd, just inside the timberline, Houston spotted 3 big, impressive bulls. The interesting part was that one bull dwarfed the other two and made the other two look like pygmies. His words. Even though they were by no means small specimens, Houston described the enormous moose as a monster and mentioned that it had almost a luminous white coloration on the antlers. Houston said, beside the spectral coloration where the antlers begin, 20 points on one side, 21 on the other. So we're talking massive. Figure what's an average buck, like 6 to 12 points?
You're talking about like a deer
If a deer,
versus a moose?
yeah. So just to give them an idea of what
Probably.
yeah.
Sounds
So
about right.
figure like
12 would be a large.
Right, very
yeah.
deer.
So
Yeah.
you're looking at something easily bigger than the biggest rack of deer antlers you've ever seen. With a palm, which is the main part, at least 18 inches wide, right by the head in the velvet. At that time, some skeptics pointed out that it may have just been a large gray horse that escaped a logging camp, but I don't know of any horse that would.
Have antlers.
But this would certainly not account for the size or the antlers, as you said, as Robert mentioned. Moose are typically larger than horses, and an experienced hunter would not likely mistake a horse for a moose. Perhaps a more reasonable explanation is that the specter moose was actually an individual or individuals exhibiting unusual coloration. While most moose are brown, there have been cases reported of white moose. It's uncertain just why this pattern comes up from time to time, but it's not a true albino moose because they still have brown eyes. The color pattern is extremely rare because anything that's white in the woods doesn't tend to stay around for very long, much less get that huge. But there is an area of Ontario, Canada that's been called the White Moose Forest due to the uncommon number of sightings of white moose there. The small town of Folliet, as well as Ivanhoe Lake Provincial Park, seem to be the center of this White Moose Forest, and it is here most of the sightings have occurred. It said it could certainly account for ghostly moose with spectral white coloration, although they said they're absolutely monstrous.
Wow.
And they tend to be able to shapeshift and leave the dimension. So I don't know. It's a very talented moose.
The best kind of moose.
Very talented moose indeed. Could a large moose with a rare color pattern such as this be behind the historical counts of the spectral moose of Maine, or is there some kind of mystical, ghostly moose out there prowling Maine's forest and rearing its enormous antlers every once in a while? It's difficult to say whether it is or whether it'll appear again. For now, the creature remains mostly a local legend that has accumulated its fair share of lore over the years. So this kind of brings up a couple of different things. They said, it's got the local urban legend thing because no one's actually gotten a real picture of it, and we tried to get it, but then it disappeared. And it's, it's like the 1930s, the 1910s. But it kind of suggests itself like it's not a true crypto,
Right.
It's not a true, it's not like the Loch Ness Monster. It's not like
Right.
the Lake Champlain Monster
Odd
or
thing nobody's seen, people
Bigfoot or
have
something.
seen.
But it's saying, well, if it can, kind of phase in and out, if it's kind of spectral, then it's like, well, now you're getting into it. Could it be an apparition?
Right.
So you're kind of opening up a couple of different.
Yeah.
You're kind of dipping into a couple different things here, with this one moose sighting.
That's funny. I actually recently saw an article as well, just to add to that.
Yeah.
That it's not a cryptid, but it's an all black rooster. Have you guys seen this thing? It's extremely rare, and it's all black inside and out.
Oh, yeah.
Its mouth is all black. Its throat,
The
its
bones.
feathers, the beak, everything. Like it was dipped in mud or oil. Even.
I've heard it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and even if you cut it open,
It's all black.
the
inside, all
muscles
the
are
organs,
black.
muscles,
The bones are
everything.
black. It's a
Everything.
black
extremely
chicken.
rare. But I mean, in today's society, that's considered a cryptid. It's not something that's common. It's
Right.
not something that you've seen. It's like the colossal squid or stuff like that. You
Mhm.
know.
Which
But
they've actually
now.
they actually have
And-
they have a documentary where they're autopsying.
Yeah,
the
and then
things.
people are telling you that cryptozoology doesn't exist, but meanwhile we find these things that
Stuff-
just shift over to the next thing. It says, oh well, you're not a cryptid anymore. Now you're
you're-
part of science.
Right.
because
Yeah.
We found you.
Uh-huh.
But yeah,
But it said, okay, they say, well, there's an argument that we do have these white moose, and they're an actual thing that exists. But this particular moose is massive, a lot bigger
it's
than the
crazy.
other, than normal sized moose. But it's also not behaving in a way of any living thing that we know about. being able to go through it, physically, like go through solid objects and phase in and out. That's not.
It's not common for most moose.
Yeah, it's not a common moose, or anything is said that's alive.
Yeah.
So you have to, because then it kind of brings up the idea of, okay, maybe it's an apparition, but if you can have an animal apparition, we've had listeners say, well, can you have a dog? We even talked about like the dog apparitions and things like that. So now you're kind of opening up that whole idea of, well, if an animal can be an apparition, what does that say about the who's what becomes an apparition and what doesn't?
Right, absolutely.
It's
interesting.
So I said it kind of opens up.
If we lived near there, I'd say to check it out.
Yeah, right.
Let's go to Maine.
Let's
go to
I've
Maine.
been to Maine since my honeymoon.
And they would. So I'm sure
nearly a decade ago.
I'm sure they would have been forgiven with those with the courts by now. So
right.
I think
what
we
is
could
it?
do
7 years? 7? Yeah,
I think so.
Should be good.
Just we'll hide you in the trunk, and nobody will ever heard of you.
There's no checkpoints in Maine.
We won't tell.
Yeah. That the large Alaskan moose can be 7 feet tall and about, they said, 7.5 to 10.5 feet long. So they from nose to hip bones.
Yeah.
But can it go through solid objects?
Yeah.
Probably not, but they don't have that on National Geographic.
It probably could. The solid object would get knocked over.
How solid are you?
Yeah, exactly.
You were solid. No, so I said, please feel free to get in touch with us and
yeah, check it out.
And let us know your thoughts.
It's interesting. I love cryptozoology because it's like the paranormal where, except you're trying to find something physical, and if you find it, you may regret it.
Yeah. Or you find somebody that will reward you handsomely, like the Lake Champlain monster. I believe that $1 million prize is still out for definitive proof, and that is something we can. That is something we can get to.
Champlain. Yeah,
absolutely.
All right, thanks, Nancy.
No
that was
problem.
excellent. All right, so now we're going to move into our fan questions. We have 2 for today, and the first one says, "I woke up the other morning with a handprint on my stomach. What could cause that?" This comes from Merrill.
Good question. Handprint in your stomach? Well, I mean, the logical explanation would be that you may have slept on your hand, and you woke up, and bam, there it is. That is the logical explanation. So what you gotta do is you gotta obviously it was the other morning, so it's still within your mind. Try to remember, that day. What was your day like? Were you exhausted? Where that night you kind of fell asleep, and it could have been where you just completely out cold, and you may have rolled over onto your hand, and then just by sleeping on it all night, you wake up the next morning, there's your handprint. Is it any significance to your size of your hand? That's the first thing you got to do is check. Be the investigator yourself. Could. I have heard of stories and claims of people actually getting touched by a ghost, and whether it be a handprint or whatever it might be. Is it possible? Well, anything's possible. But like I said, the logical explanation is that good chances you probably slept.
Is there anyone else in your bed with you?
Yeah, you may have slept on their hand.
There you go.
How's your wrist
Just
feel
not
the next
noticed.
morning? Was it all
Yeah.
numb?
These are all things you got to ask yourself, and then kind of come up with the conclusion. I mean, I can only tell you from one sentence of what it possibly could be. So
yeah, start with the obvious.
Right.
Go from there, and if you eliminate those as possibilities, then you may have to look into something further from there.
Sure.
That's the same thing of people waking up with scratches.
Right.
The first thing is, do you sleep with jewelry on? Could you have fallen asleep with your, like I wear glasses.
Yeah.
I have to make sure I take my glasses off because you fall, you're reading a book or something, watching TV, and you fall asleep. And earrings, glasses, necklaces, rings, bracelets, watches.
Yeah.
Could you scratch yourself?
Mm-hmm.
Could you have had this and scratch yourself and just didn't? You were just in that deep sleep, but you just didn't realize it.
Mhm.
Is it possible? Absolutely.
Yeah.
Do you have pets? Could any of them gotten in and just started wanting to go out or whatever?
Yeah, that's it. Yep. Simple explanations. So.
Usually.
Very good.
What's your next question?
Second question comes from Paul, and he asks, do bad smells mean that there is something evil in my house?
Absolutely not. And yeah, I mean, I have bad smells in my house every day.
And then there's garbage collection day, and everything is fine.
I'm gonna leave it at that. No, bad
White
smells
Castle.
don't necessarily mean that there's something evil in your house. I know a lot of people claim that with the demonic present, you're gonna get a foul odor, almost like a rotten egg smell, sulfur. Is that true? My beliefs, yes, that is true. But there are a lot of other things that can cause those smells as well. Many things.
Dead animal
You
on
can
the
have
wall.
a dead animal on the wall.
Mm-hmm.
Your cesspool could be backing up. Your neighbor's cesspool could be backing up, and that smell
Right.
just kind of traveled over.
Yeah.
You know.
I used to get weird
I
smells
mean,
in my old house, and it was hot summer days, and there was a garbage
There you
heap,
go.
not like a mile down the road, but that smell would just travel.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so just again, be aware of your surroundings.
Right.
Is what we suggest.
Right.
Try and debunk your own cases as they come up, and if you're not left with any rational explanation, then maybe it's worth pursuing further.
Yeah, don't jump to the conclusion. You know, I mean, like I said, obviously, there with demonic activity, you're talking about sulfur smells, rotten eggs. What else is occurring? That's the question you got to ask yourself. If that's the only thing you're getting, chances are it's probably not demonic. It's probably something that you can kind of pinpoint out, try to figure it out that way. But I mean, good question. It's not a bad question. It's something that people should be aware of. We get this all the time. I mean,
Yeah.
I get these emails constantly of people asking and tell them the same thing. You know,
Yeah.
so,
Oh yeah, absolutely.
but-
All right. Well, we don't really have time for beer review or movie review. We have to kind of just jump into our last thing. But I do want to say that October 3rd, this past Friday, Annabelle opened in theaters.
Oh yeah.
So go check it out. It's
Yeah.
it's Halloween season. Get the crap scared out of you. I know we want to go see it.
We definitely will see it.
We'll see it when it comes out, or we'll see it hopefully within the coming weeks. And
Yeah.
after we see it, we'll talk about it. I'm sure. So,
Yeah, I definitely want to see it. So,
Yeah,
Isn't
yeah,
that part of
that trailer looks creepy.
Isn't it? It's like almost a sequel, a prequel to the
Prequel.
Conjuring?
It's a
The
prequel
prequel.
to The Conjuring. Yeah, yeah,
So,
yeah. And everybody was wondering what was going on with that doll in the movie. So
Yeah. So,
it'll be cool. I saw the trailer. It freaks me out, but I
Very
don't.
cool.
I have a thing against dolls
Yeah.
possession.
You should burn them all.
Not like a Chucky thing, but
Dolls, clowns,
yeah.
I'm gonna
clown
go over,
dolls.
evidence we got?
Yeah, so now we have, for the final thing of the night, we have our LIPI Evidence Vault, and we're going to play what I consider one of our best pieces of evidence. It's from Mount Misery Road, Site 2. It's taken back in September 7th of 2006. It is a 2.5-minute clip. We're breaking it up over the next few weeks to play them for you, and we're going to start with where the first EVP comes in, and I'm going to play it for you. This isn't really an EVP in the sense that we didn't hear it when it happened. This came over the walkie-talkies.
I think it's
This-
more called like I think they call
So
it like
VP,
an
right?
RVP,
Or an
actually.
RVP?
Radio.
Radio,
it's like a radio voice phenomenon,
Oh,
something
okay.
like that. Radio
Right.
frequency voice phenomenon.
So this came through our walkies, and we can tell it's not somebody messing with us because there's no beeps. Our walkies make a beep when somebody chimes in or you chime in. It always makes that click sound. This is interference, comes straight through the walkie, talks to us, and just fades away, and it goes on for a long time. But let me play this EVP for you right now, and we'll go from there.
What the fuck?
Well, that was a slight issue with that.
Technical error.
Technical difficulties here. I'll play it for you guys one more time.
What the fuck?
Mike, I'll let you take it. Explain this EVP.
Yeah, this was actually the first time we were ever actually investigating this site. This is called Mount Misery Site 2. Mount Misery Road is actually broken up into 3 different sites because it's such a large place. So we did Site 1 quite often, and then we decided to do Site 2 this one particular night. And going in blind, we had nothing, nothing to expect. We were just like, whatever. And the claims is that there is a hospital that was either it was either a military hospital or a psychiatric ward, and it burnt down multiple times. And after the third time it burnt down, they decided not to rebuild it. With the stories of the psychiatric hospital being there, they claimed that there was a patient named Mary, and that's where Mary's grave and all the Mary stories come from, on Long Island. They escaped from the hospital, and she burnt it down multiple times as a revenge of what happened to her at the hospital. So, here's what we got. We were walking down the pathway, and I'd say we had about 9 or 10 investigators that night. I was the last one in line, and we're walking down, in the woods, and I kept feeling like we were being watched. And I looked behind us, and I saw what looked like a shadow person kind of cross the path. Now, I didn't say anything because I didn't want to freak the team out. It's a new location, we just caught here, so I'm like, I'll just keep it to myself. I'll kind of just deal with it, And then we started getting this, little interference on our walkies. Nobody really said anything, so I didn't want to, mention anything, so we just kind of kept going. We came to this little clearing where the pathways kind of split up, and there's, a red fire hydrant right there, and we stopped, and right away we got this voice over the walkies that said, "They're here," and it said it twice. And we kind of, all freaked out. You hear somebody said, that might have been me, says, "What the fuck?" It caught us off guard. We were not expecting that. And this is literally within the first, I think, 8 minutes of the investigation. This is right into it. So it kind of freaked us out a little bit, and it lasted about 1.5 minutes. And like Dimitri said, we're going to play clips over the next few weeks of that whole entire thing, and maybe one of the last, once we're done with all the clips, we'll play it as a direct whole.
I was trying to debate if we should play the whole thing first.
Right.
And kind of give an overview.
No, we'll do it at the end.
I think it's
end.
better to play it in pieces and then give you the whole thing.
Yeah, that's what we got. It came over the walkies, and the biggest thing is, maybe somebody was messing with you. And once you hear this later on, you actually hear one of our investigators. Somebody's messing with us, But our walkie-talkies, when we radio each other, it beeps. There's a beep after the communication. Here, there is none. So, yeah.
Yeah,
interesting stuff.
It's really creepy. It's cool. It's really
Definitely
cool.
is. Definitely
One of my
is.
favorite places to investigate, Mount Misery.
Absolutely. Without
All
doubt.
of Mount Misery, because
Well,
it's
yeah.
broken into Site 3.
Right.
3 sites. We say this is Site 2, but we'll get more into Mount Misery as the weeks go on and stuff like that. So, but that's all we have for today. So we hope you guys enjoyed this first episode of the Ghost News Network, and come back next week, and we'll have tons more stuff to go over. So this is Dimitri Haratos with
Michael Carnito.
Rob Levine.
Nancy Scary.
and we are signing off. Have a good night, everybody. See you next week.
Peace
Good night.
out.
Wait.
Have a good night.